the Chabad convention of Pesach Sheni, Yudal Iyar, Shin Chaf Hey, when none of you were born yet. This was the year 1965. So the Rebbe addressed the lesson and directive from the story of Pesach Sheni that the Yidden said, Lama Nigara, that they could not offer up the korban of Pesach Rishon because they were Tamei, and because of that they demanded and they wanted to have the opportunity to be able to make a korban Pesach. And the Eibishter responded and said, okay, we'll make a Pesach Sheni. Eines Bnei Yisrael, the Yidden's complaint, that we are impure because we got Tamei from a contact with a dead body. At the time of korban Pesach, we were Tamei, so why should we be lacking and missing out and not have the korban Pesach? It brought to the fact Hashem recognized how right their demand was, and he gave them the opportunity Pesach Sheni to bring a second time, a second korban Pesach. Until today, that even though the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed and we don't actually have a korban Pesach, Mikol Makim, despite that we don't have a korban Pesach, so you would think that the whole idea of Pesach Sheni doesn't apply. Still in all, Mitzayim Misayim, we mark the day the Iyar without saying supplication prayers in davening. So we see that even now, when there's no Beis Hamikdash and no actual korban Pesach brought, the message of Pesach Sheni and the application of Pesach Sheni still applies nowadays as well. So the Rebbe goes on the next page. When one thinks into the language that the Yidden said when they were complaining, so it's seemingly a wonder comes up. At the opening to their statement, to their words, what did they say? We are impure because we got in contact with a person that passed away. And therefore, they were saying afterwards, why should we be lacking? Why should we be missing out on korban Pesach because of it? Seemingly, their complaint should have been the opposite. Since Hashem commanded to offer up the korban, therefore, they should have found some type of idea, some type of advice how to bring to bring the korban Pesach, because they were impure. In other words, why the focus first on the negative? Just focus, we need to bring a korban Pesach. Then you could explain what happened. You know what happened? We couldn't bring it the first time because then we were Tamei, then we were impure, then we couldn't bring the korban in the Beis Hamikdash. They were in the Mishkan, in the Midbar. But why do you start off with the negative? We were impure, and then you go to what you want to do. First, start off with the positive, with the good. We want to bring a korban Pesach. The Rebbe says, in this language, in this order, it's hidden a deep lesson. The korban Pesach mitzinu davar shoyne memar b'sakarbonis. In korban Pesach, we find something different and unique than the majority of korbanos. In general, the korbanos are divided into two categories and types of korbanos. There are korbanos that are brought, sacrifices that are brought, that are of the individual. In other words, an individual Yid brings a korban, either as a donation or as an atonement for something he may have not done appropriately. But that is the own individual's right, choice, privilege, obligation to bring a korban. Yeshem ke'elu, and then there's a type and category of korbanos, shem korbanos zibur, that these are communal korbanos. Even in the communal korbanos, aval gam elu ein kol echad me'atzibur meviyah, though it is a communal offering, one cannot just say, well, I'm part of the community, I'm going to go ahead and bring the korban. That's not the way it works. The communal offerings are brought in the Beis HaMikdash as representative of the entire congregation, entire Klal Yisrael. So let's say when there's a korban tamid brought every morning and every evening, or the Musaf korbanos on Shabbos, or Rosh Chodesh extra korbanos, or the different korbanos brought on different Yom Tovim. So again, not everybody goes to the Beis HaMikdash to bring these communal korbanos, but rather the people that are stationed there in the Beis HaMikdash, they are the ones that bring it on behalf of the entire community. Korban Pesach is very interestingly a amalgam of both of these things. Ilu b'Korban Pesach hadover shoyna. As opposed to Korban Pesach, the matter is distinct and different. Chad Gisa on the one hand, Zeu Korban Yachid shetzarech kol echad lavia ba'atzmi. It's considered an individual korban that every person has an obligation on his own to bring this. Sometimes it's not a single person; it's in partnership with their family, etc. You got to calculate how many people are going to eat from the same korban, but each individual yid has the obligation to bring the korban. Li'idach Yisa, on the other hand, ugam korban sibur. It's also considered a communal offering. How come? In what way? Shekol Am Yisrael tzrichim lakrivay ba'isas man. The entire congregation, the entire Am Yisrael has to bring the korban Pesach at the same time. Individual korbanos. Let's say I decide to bring a donation of a korban oil or a korban shlom. It's my individual choice and my individual obligation, maybe if I had an obligation to bring it, but it's not at the exact same time that everybody else might have that choice or obligation to bring that korban. As opposed to korban Pesach, which is every individual's korban, and at the same time, while it's everybody individual's korban, we bring it communally all together at the identical time. This was the complaint of the Bnei Yisrael. The fact that we became impure because we were dealing with a body of someone that passed away. Seemingly, it's necessary. It had to be that way. Because the way the Eibishter created the world, there's going to be someone that's going to be involved in being impure at some time. We're talking about a nation that its populace is millions of people. And especially like the bracha of the Eibishter, that they are innumerable. They will not be able to be counted. So in the nature of the world, it is it's not possible. It will not be. It's impossible that will not be missing, heaven forbid, a number of people that reached 120 years, etc., meaning reached the time when they have to leave this world. According to the amount of years that Hashem apportioned and allotted for them in their life. Therefore, it's impossible, or it's totally improbable, that it won't occur that someone will pass away in the days in close proximity to Pesach. So there will have to be automatically there will be people, for example, Chevra Kadisha and so on, that will have to be involved in the taking care of the person that passed away. In such a manner that they will have to become impure because of what Torah demands of the Yidden, how we are supposed to treat a person that passed away. Even from a human perspective, menschlichkeit. We don't just say, well, it's Pesach, not taking care. No, you're a mensch, you got to take care of this person that passed away. If so comes out, that Hashem is as if doing two opposites. Mitzad echad, mitzav asher kol Yehudi muchar ba'atzmai davke lahavi korban pesach b'yudav v'nis. On the one hand, he commands that every Yid must bring a korban pesach on the 14th of Nisan. Not some will bring it at this time, some will bring it at that time, like we find by other individual korbanos. Asher achein, all of Liyas time. That because of that Jew must be pure, because or else someone that's impure came in contact with a dead body cannot bring a korban. On the other hand, he established the world in such a manner, according to Torah obligation, people will be involved at this time in such matters, it will not allow for them to be in a state of purity, in such a way that they will not be able to offer the korban of Hashem in its time on the 14th of this. So again, let's look at it again in light of the two types of korbanos. When you're dealing with communal offerings that are totally communal, not all the Yidden are bringing it. There is the communal offering of Quran, Shabbat, Yom Tovim, and even the daily communal offerings, but not every Yid has to be there. So therefore, if a person became Tamei, as in the nature of the world that a person passes away and the people involved will become Tamei, it's no problem as far as he's concerned, because there's always the people in the Beis HaMikdash that will be able to bring that korban. When we have an individual's korban, let's say an individual got an obligation to bring a korban or has a desire to bring a korban, he wants to bring a Thanksgiving offering, a korban toida, or something else. So again, there are choices of someone else that could be involved in the Chevra Kadisha this time, or and similar situation. But when you have a situation where everybody in Klal Yisrael needs to bring a korban at the same time, it's impossible, the way the nature of the world runs, that that everybody will be in a state where they can bring a korban. So it comes out that Hashem instituted a korban and a law of a korban that's not possible for every single Yid to do, because someone is going to pass away, and therefore some Yid is going to have to be involved with it. So it comes out that there's going to be some Yidden that are not going to be able to do the korban Pesach in its time. So now the Rebbe concludes, this will be understood, the manner of how they set forth their complaint. First they said, we were Tamei, and then they said, or we are Tamei, and then they said, why should we be missing? Since we're impure because of coming in contact with the body of a person that passed away. And why are we so? Not by our own choice. Since Hashem created the world in such a fashion, that people should be involved in such a mitzvah that causes them impurity. How is it possible to demand from them to offer the korban of Hashem in its time? How is that? It doesn't make any sense. When Hashem gives a Torah, He gives it to all the Yidden. So that was the first part of the question. They didn't ask first, why are we missing? And then they gave an excuse, we are missing because we were Tamei. No, they set forth a complaint against the whole system. The whole system is like not correct. You establish a korban that's meant for every Yid to bring at the identical time, but that is an impossibility because there's always going to be some Yidden that are going to be Tamei. So that was their presentation of their problem about how the entire laws of Korban Pesach was established in such a way that did not allow for everybody to do it. And Hashem actually recognized in the correctness of their complaint. And therefore that you cannot take away from them the merit and the opportunity and privilege to offer up the Korban Pesach. And the merit of this complaint of these individuals, was added another Yom Tov amongst the Yidden. Without their complaint, we wouldn't have had the Yom Tov Pesach Sheni. But as we spoke about and what we learned on Sunday, that Yidden created this Yom Tov. Shabbos, it comes from Hashem. Even Yom Tovim, Bezin establishes the date, but the actual Yom Tov of Shavuos, Sukkot, Pesach, and so on, this comes from Hashem. Yidden created this Yom Tov. Yidden brought about a new mitzvah, Pesach Sheni. It was established and formed specifically for those that were not capable and not able to offer the first Korban Pesach. From here, there's a deep lesson to every single one. Seemingly, the question arises, since Hashem wants that the Jewish people should be a holy nation, until it should be recognized upon them that they are distinct in the way they act from all the other nations. Therefore, it's incumbent upon them as being a holy nation that needs to be recognized and distinct their differences from all the nations. They have to observe Shabbos. They need to eat kosher food. They need to be careful with all the mitzvahs that's written in Shulchan Aruch. That's the way Hashem set up the world. That's the way Hashem wanted the Jewish people to be. But alongside with this, Hashem created them in such a manner that a great portion of the hours of the day, they find themselves in a state and situation that they're not able to study Torah or to devote themselves to Jewish education, etc. And the demand is that simultaneously they should be involved in the world and at the same time follow through according to Shulchan Aruch. How is it possible to do both together? For this Hashem replies, though the matter may seem to be difficult, mitzvahs to be in the world, and alongside with that fulfill mitzvahs, especially those mitzvahs that are only once a year. And therefore, since it's once a year, there's no makeup for them. If the day will pass and I didn't fulfill the mitzvah of that day, I lose the opportunity to fulfill it. Still, know the Jewish people should know. If they will only want this, Hashem will always give them the opportunity to fulfill the mitzvahs. And no detail will get lost and no detail will be missed out. Though, out of the nature of creation, the matter seems impossible, just like it seemed impossible that everybody would be able to bring a Korban Pesach, because of the nature of the world is that people would pass away. And if people would pass away, there would have to be people that couldn't bring the Korban Pesach. So the same thing when we think it's impossible, because of how we need to be involved in the world, we need to miss out on certain things of Torah mitzvahs. So Hashem assures us and says, no, even while being involved in the world, even by doing things that nature demands of us to do, which is the nature that Hashem created, it's still, the Eibishter assures us that we will not miss out on Torah mitzvahs. You say to Mekach, even more so, to such a degree, will Hashem make sure that this doesn't occur, even if we will need, for the sake of those few Jews that cannot fit in nature with their Torah mitzvahs, and because of those few Jews, we're going to have to make a whole new thing that wasn't there up till now. The dugmas in Pesach Sheni, similar to the idea of second Pesach, which was a created thing. There was never anything like it. Like we said before, so too, Hashem will do that for their sake. And this is the special, unique lesson for our days. Though sometimes it seems that according to all calculations, a person cannot devote themselves appropriately to Torah study the way it should be. Or a person cannot devote themselves to the education of their children. Since it seems to our eyes that it's impossible to live in our world this way. Don't forget, this was still 1965, when there was a lot of pushback to Yiddishkeit, even in Torah observance circles, where he said, either you got to be out of this world to do Torah mitzvahs, but if you're in this world, you can't. So the Rebbe said, no. We need to know all this is the counsel and the excuses of the Eitzah Hara. All that's necessary is an inner resolve, a powerful inner resolve. It's impossible under any situation, a state, that a Yid should be, regardless of who he is, he should not be amongst the Bnei Yisrael because of fulfilling Torah mitzvahs. So if a person resolves innerly and strongly that he will always be devoted, regardless of his involvement in the world, then we see with our senses, Hashem gives everyone the unique possibility that's necessary for his behalf. He gives him the capability tailor-made for him, just like the Eibishter gave a new Yom Tov, the Yom Tov of Pesach Sheni, the same thing. The Eibishter will give a new strength, a new capability, which seems completely unnatural and completely out of the ordinary, that the Yidden will be able to do and overcome all the physical outside things. Last page, Gimel. An additional lesson, a deeper lesson that's derived from the manner how the story of Pesach Sheni unfolds. So the Rebbe, here, this is also similar to what we learned on Sunday. It's known the question of the commentaries. Hashem already knew initially that there are those Jews that there will be impure because of contact with the body of someone that passed away. And in such a way that they will not be able to offer the Korban Pesach the first time around on the 14th of Nisan. And like we said before, it is an inescapable situation. This is always going to occur. It's impossible that every single Yid is going to be in a nation of millions of people, that every single Yid is going to be tired when the 14th of Nisan comes along. It's an impossibility. So if Hashem already knew that this was going to take place, and especially that it was an unavoidable thing, why did Hashem delay and wait until they would come with the man? Why should we be missing out? He did not say initially with his command for the first Pesach. He could have right away put this in the halachas in the first Pesach. Said, you know what? All of you need to bring a Korban Pesach. I know not everybody's going to be able to bring the Korban Pesach. So for those of you that I know will not be able to bring a Korban Pesach, you'll have a second opportunity. No, he didn't do that. He waited. And instead of saying immediately, Pesach Sheni, that those are not able to bring it on the time, should bring it on the second Pesach. So the Eibishter waited. Why did he wait? In this story, it's embedded a deep lesson. Yes, there are those that ask, since Hashem wants that Yidden should fulfill Torah mitzvahs, why does Hashem make this so that the matter is bound up with so many difficulties and so many tests? To such a degree, the Yitzhahara indicates to the person, the Yitzhahara presents it to the person as if it's impossible or almost impossible to keep Torah mitzvahs when being a Jew is such a difficult life. Only when the person totally is willing to throw his life away for his Yiddishkeit, does he see that it's possible to fulfill Hashem's will. And again, when we come in conversations with people that may not be that familiar or that observant, etc., they look at it, it's impossible. It's impossible to keep Shabbos. It's impossible to keep kosher. So many difficult things, so many hard things to do. So why does the Eibishter allow that the Yitzhahara should present this fallacy to us as fact? And we have to disprove it by experience. So Pesach Sheni, this comes the lesson from the second Pesach. As long as the Jewish people were not concerned about the fact that they cannot bring the Korban Pesach, so then it was impossible. In other words, it's up to us. If we consider it impossible, so then it was a self-fulfilling prophecy. It would have stayed impossible if we would have never complained to Hashem and said, hold on, we need to be Makar Korban Pesach. They would have lost. They wouldn't have had it. It would have remained an impossibility. That the moment that it was awakened by them, the Jewish core, they came rushing and crying out to Moshe Rabbeinu, why should we be missing? Does it make sense? How can we be different from the entire nation that they brought a carbon? And they did not bring it. That opened up for them the new possibility from heaven. This is a very interesting point, that things are actually impossible until we break it through. We need to make it possible. And here the Rebbe concludes, this is the response. HaKadosh Baruch Hu roitze sheTorah v'Yadus yikarim etzel Yehudi. Hashem wants that Torah and Yiddishkeit should be precious by a Yid. V'roitze livchein ad kama achin yaker le'adav. And Hashem wants to test and see how precious is Torah mitzvahs to Yid. And when a Jewish heart becomes all scrunched inside of him, he cries up to the depth of his heart to Hashem, I want to fulfill Shulchan Aruch, but I do not see any possibility for this because of the nature of the world that I find myself in. So then Hashem changes the entire situation. And he gives him the full capability to be together with all Jewish people, and to offer a Korban Pesach. From this Korban, they will go out of the enslavement from Mitzrayim. And that was then. But this lesson applies to us as now as well. That by insisting, that very insistence, Hashem breaks through the boundaries of nature for us. Hashem, like we've many times spoken in our B'tachin Shir, this is where it connects with our Simcha and B'tachin topic. That B'tachin is not just concerning physical things. B'tachin does not just mean that we have trust and confidence that Hashem will give us the money we need to live off of, Hashem will give us the health, etc., etc. But also, B'tachin means when it comes to Torah mitzvahs, that when things look like it's impossible to do this mitzvah, we need to have B'tachin that Hashem will help us do the mitzvah. And the same thing over here, the Yidden cried out, we want to do the Korban Pesach. That very crying out that we want to do the Korban Pesach ensured that they would have it. And the same thing the Rebbe says, every single time I have difficulty doing a mitzvah, and I look at the world around me and I say, it's impossible. How can a Yid keep Shabbos in such a situation? How can a Yid keep this mitzvah in this physical situation? I need to cry out to Hashem, and I need to say, I don't want to fulfill Shulchan Aruch, but I don't see how the world's going to allow for it. Still in all, Hashem, by crying out to Hashem, I want to do this, so that Hashem breaks it through for us and enables us. So it's in every single generation. Through the self-sacrifices, we leave all the boundaries and limitations behind that we are able to overcome. And Hashem opens up new channels and breaks us out of these limitations and allows us to do things that up till a moment before seemed impossible.